Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're taking a macro to micro architectural tour of the Action Scientist digital fortress. We are completely shifting our paradigm here. We're moving away from measuring our wealth in melting fiat currency, and instead we're focusing on capturing absolute cryptographic energy. We're going to dive into a highly structured approach for building a personal wealth architecture that literally turns your everyday spending into a relentless engine for absolute scarcity. We're starting off with this incredibly powerful observation from a recent banking committee markup. It says, a money with no center, that's not an investment product. That's an escape hatch from a system whose only move when it breaks is to quietly hand you the bill. I really want you to let that sink in for a second. We aren't just talking about speculation or day trading today. We're talking about building a mathematically secure, totally unseizable escape hatch for your life's energy. Okay, so to understand exactly why we absolutely need this escape hatch, we really have to look at the core issue, which we can call the fiat void. Traditional fiat currency suffers from this constant silent tax of inflation. As an astrophysicist reviewing Bitcoin's underlying network pointed out, fiat is entirely governed by committees, the Fed, the Treasury, money center banks. And when that system gets put under severe stress, like in 2008 or during COVID when they expanded the money supply by a staggering 40%, the system is simply forced to restructure. It's a structural leak that is constantly draining your stored energy. Now, traditionally, the answer to this fiat decay was gold. But here's the crazy thing. Gold inherently inflates. Think about it. Gold is literally formed by cosmic collisions in deep space. Because stars occasionally crash into each other out there, its supply isn't actually mathematically capped in the universe. There's always more of it. You have to compare that ancient, flawed standard against Bitcoin, which is literally the first scientifically precise monetary standard in human history. It has an absolutely finite cap of 21 million, governed entirely by energy and math, not exploding stars. And that brings us to a really fascinating concept you might not have heard of before: autopoiesis. It basically just means a system that is capable of reproducing and maintaining itself. Bitcoin is completely autopoietic. It creates its own ledger, it governs its own rules, and it naturally locks into a stabilizing power law over time. There is no central manipulation required whatsoever. It is absolute thermodynamic bedrock. So the absolutely crucial point here is that we must abandon measuring our wealth in dollars. If the dollar is constantly diluting, using it as your ruler is just a massive mistake. Instead, we have to transition to the Satoshi standard. This means we start tracking our success by our sat velocity, which is exactly how fast we are pulling units of absolute scarcity, Satoshis, out of public circulation and locking them into our digital fortress. To put that into perspective, in the quantitative audit we're reviewing today, the target portfolio is removing roughly 596,000 Satoshis from the float every single week. Let's move over to the sovereign chessboard metaphor and see exactly how this builds our portfolio strategy. This is where we translate complex asset classes into a highly strategic defensive formation. First up, we have the king, which is self-custody Bitcoin, our absolute anchor, our digital granite. Then we have the queen, our yield plasma, generating cash flow for things like experience budgets. We have our bishops, representing intelligence networks like Tau, generating yield. And finally, the knights. These are flexible military assets. You've got ETH for collateral, SOL for gas, and assets like ADA and ATOM functioning as decentralized hard assets. They basically operate much like physical reserves of silver or gold, but completely built for the digital age. As you start deploying these sovereign chess pieces, you'll quickly see that every single asset has a strictly defined role. They don't just sit there gathering digital dust. They operate harmoniously to protect your king. The king remains totally invisible and off-platform. The queen generates plasma, meaning those dividend distributions that are continuously auto-routed right back into the system. The bishops, like BitTensor's Tau, act as intelligence networks staked to fund your treasury. And the knights provide the everyday functional utility needed to keep the whole wealth engine running smoothly. This entire thermodynamic wealth engine forms a beautifully reflexive loop known as sat flow. Every single dollar of inflow, whether that's from tips, your side hustles, standard DCA, or the yield from your asset base, it all has a designated conversion path. And every single path leads directly to a Satoshi endpoint. It's an automated, relentless factory specifically designed for capturing cryptographic energy. Now, we have to acknowledge the most massive yet entirely hidden part of this fortress, the king tier pipeline. By doctrine, this operates completely off-grid. It's basically a protocol running an hourly cadence, quietly moving assets from applications directly into cold wallet self-custody. It is totally invisible to standard brokerage tooling, and it's never quantified in normal financial audits. This right here is true terminal sovereignty. You control the keys, therefore you control your fate.
So let's break down the standalone sovereign loop that actually runs in parallel to all of this. This is the Uphold Digital Fortress 5-piece engine. It's a localized system where complex staking and borrowing mechanics are utilized sequentially to compound your wealth. You have digital Granite for your hardcore savings, digital intelligence earning you yield via TAO, digital oil using ETH as your collateral, digital gas via staked SOL that's routed through stablecoins, and finally, digital gold, leveraging an XRP cashback rail.
The true genius of this system is how you weaponize these assets without ever actually selling your principal. You are literally using your knights and bishops to feed the king. For example, you take your digital oil, Ethereum, and lock it up as collateral to draw a low-interest credit line. You then use that cash as one-time fuel for your Bitcoin DCA. Meanwhile, you stake your digital gas, Solana, for yield, and your digital intelligence, Teo, for even more yield. You are creating a compounding income machine purely out of the operational friction of the network. And here is the Uphold Cash Shield in action. This is the reflexive loop at the very heart of your daily operations. By routing your everyday fiat spending, groceries, gas, bills, the whole shebang, through a 2% cryptographic cashback rail using XRP, you literally force the expansion of fiat to fund your Satoshi accumulation. At $25,000 of normal yearly spend, that is roughly 628,000 free Satoshis pulled out of thin air simply because you changed the rail your daily life runs on. It constantly drives the valuation of your fortress higher. This entire setup creates what the analysis calls the compounding sovereignty paradox. It is a mathematically perfect win-win dynamic against a depreciating fiat denominator. Think about how empowering this actually is. When the market dips and fiat values are lower, your weekly dollar cost averaging buys significantly more Satoshis, driving your accumulation speed right through the roof. But when the market goes parabolic and fiat values are high, your existing stack becomes a massive dollar fortress. You literally win either way. Let's look at the mathematical signature of this paradox over a 28-year projection. If Bitcoin reaches only $250,000, you end up accumulating vastly more actual Bitcoin, simply because every dollar buys more sats along the way. If Bitcoin hits $2 million, you accumulate fewer sats, but your terminal dollar equivalent is exponentially larger. No matter which direction the fiat value moves, this thermodynamic engine constantly accelerates your escape. So how do you actually know if your architecture is working? You ask yourself about the 4 green lights of thermodynamic wealth. 1. Is your constant DCA removing sats from the float? 2. Are your queen-tier dividend distributions auto-routing into further capture? 3. Are your funding vehicles actively supplying operational fuel? And 4. Is your 5-piece engine successfully weaponizing your daily spend? If all 4 of those are green, your digital fortress is running perfectly. It is autonomously converting fiat decay into absolute scarcity. As we wrap up this architectural tour, I really want you to ask yourself a very serious question based on the data we've walked through today. When the fiat system inevitably breaks, when those committees restructure the rules and quietly hand you the bill, will your life's energy be trapped in the void, or will it be securely locked within a mathematically precise, self-governing escape hatch? What standard is your energy truly measured against? Because ultimately, when you view the chessboard through the Satoshi standard and completely abandon the broken rulers of the past, the endgame becomes wonderfully clear. Gold is fear, fiat is trash, Satoshis are king. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Now go secure your sovereign architecture.